Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: a slow-motion property crash in Germany is a bigger threat to banks than US CRE. She crackdown on hedonistic bankers fuels industry brain drain. My diary is my best friend. League great Wally Lewis urges politicians to put CTE funding in budget. Why firms are racing to produce green ammonia. Phones are distracting students in class. More states are pressing schools to ban them. A slow-motion property crash in Germany is a bigger threat to banks than US CRE. Bloomberg. German banks are facing the threat of a slow-motion commercial real estate (CRE) crash, as the country's lenders are more exposed to CRE than most of their European peers, according to a study. The low level of non-performing loans is partly because German banks update valuations of buildings they have financed less frequently than their US or UK peers. The country's property values are particularly vulnerable to higher borrowing costs, as capitalization rates had been pushed lower than other markets during the cheap money era. She crackdown on hedonistic bankers fuels industry brain drain. Bloomberg. China's crackdown on the financial sector is causing finance professionals to rethink their careers. President Xi Jinping's call for common prosperity has hit salaries hard and triggered belt tightening. In addition, a dragnet on alleged corruption has unnerved the entire industry. Indications are growing that she is shifting away from 4 decades of market-oriented reforms and financial innovation, emphasizing the Communist Party's centralized and unified leadership of the sector. Professor Zhi Wuchen at the University of Hong Kong said he sees a new Chinese economy coming into shape soon in which the financial sector will have only 2 types of players: government-run banks and government-run insurance companies. Alicia Garcia Herrero, chief Asia-Pacific economist at Natixis SA, said the slogans and crackdowns by Chinese leaders are about control. While China has every reason to keep a tight lid on the sector to avoid systemic risks, the crackdown risks paralyzing an industry badly in need of innovation. About 80% of firms in China's banking and financial services sector have lost talent in the past 6 months, according to a recent survey by Morgan McKinley. My diary is my best friend. League great Wally Lewis urges politicians to put CTE funding in budget. ABC. Rugby league legend Wally Lewis has taken his fight against chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, to Parliament House, advocating for funding for CTE education, support, and awareness. Lewis, who is battling short-term memory loss, revealed that his diary is his best friend and helps him get through each day. He was diagnosed with probable CTE and experiences symptoms such as short-term memory loss. The delegation also included representatives from various organizations, including Dementia Australia and the Brain Foundation. They are calling for funding to provide support and raise awareness about CTE, particularly in protecting Australian children who play contact sports. Why firms are racing to produce green ammonia. BBC. Companies are developing green ammonia production methods to reduce the climate impact of ammonia production, which currently accounts for nearly 2% of global CO2 emissions. U.S. firm Starfire Energy is developing a system that uses renewable energy, air and water to produce ammonia. It splits hydrogen from water using electrolyzers, then adds nitrogen and runs the mixture through a catalyst to produce liquid ammonia. Unlike conventional ammonia plants, Starfire's system can cycle on and off in minutes and can run on intermittent renewable energy. The company aims to deliver its first commercial-scale devices in 2025, with the capacity to produce a ton of ammonia per day. Other firms, including Iceland-based Atmonia, are also developing small-scale, containerized ammonia plants. Meanwhile, Nitricity in the US is developing a system that uses solar-powered plasma cells to fix nitrogen from the air, and then makes nitric acid that can be applied directly to soil. Phones are distracting students in class. More states are pressing schools to ban them. Associated Press. Educators and experts are calling for a ban on smartphones in US classrooms. While many schools have rules around cell phone use in place, these are often not enforced, which has prompted a growing number of states to back legislation banning the devices. Utah Governor Spencer Cox recently issued guidance calling for the removal of cell phones from classrooms, referring to studies that have shown increased learning and less distraction if the devices are removed. Last year, Florida introduced a law banning phone use during class time and access to social media on district Wi-Fi. Oklahoma, Vermont and Kansas have recently introduced similar legislation. In addition, 2 U.S. senators, Tom Cotton and Tim Kaine, have introduced legislation calling for a federal study into the effects of cell phone use in schools on students' mental health and academic performance. A national survey found that 97% of kids use their phones during school hours, and said that cell phone policies vary and are often not enforced. Advocacy group The Phone Free Schools Movement argues that policies allowing students to keep phones in their backpacks are ineffective. U.S. college basketball court storming under fire after injury. Yahoo! U.S. college basketball authorities faced fresh calls to ban rowdy post-game court invasions Monday after a second player was injured in a stampede by spectators. Friends of Knolled Forest looking to restore historic barn. Yahoo! A barn in the Knolled Forest Environmental Education Center in Pennsylvania, U.S., is in danger of collapsing due to a failing foundation wall. The barn, built in the 1830s and enlarged in the 1870s, is used for storage and as an entrance to the state-owned woodland. The Friends of Knolled Forest, a nonprofit organization, is raising funds to repair the barn and a sawmill on the same site, which is also in need of repair. The cost of rebuilding the barn's wall is estimated at $15,000, but if not repaired, costs could rise to over $100,000. Number 8 UCLA defeats 13th-ranked Colorado 53-45 and moves into a tie for second in Pac-12. Associated Press. UCLA beat Colorado 53-45 on Monday, with Kiki Rice and Charisma Osborne leading the way with 20 and 14 points respectively. The win helped UCLA secure a three-way tie for second in the Pac-12. The Bruins have secured 7 wins against top 25 teams this season. Charles D. Ferris, a champion of deregulation at the FCC, dies at 90. Washington Post. Charles D. Ferris, former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, has died at the age of 90. Ferris served as head of the FCC from 1977 to 1981. During his tenure, he loosened regulations on a range of industries, arguing that it was better for the public interest to have more competition. Ferris was appointed by President Jimmy Carter and was confirmed by the Senate in October 1977. He had no specific knowledge of broadcasting or communications, but had spent 14 years as a chief counsel to the Senate Majority Leader. Ferris used this experience to drive through a number of reforms at the FCC, including changing the daily schedule of agency employees and hiring a number of economists to an organization that had been staffed mainly by lawyers. His changes paved the way for consolidation between the telephone and computer industries and helped encourage a cable television boom. Ferris was also a trustee of Boston College and served on the board of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Slaying of Georgia student becomes part of U.S. immigration debate. Washington Post. The killing of a Georgia nursing student allegedly by a Venezuelan migrant has quickly intensified the country's immigration debate as President Biden and leading Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump prepare trips to the border this week. Hong Kong budget to offer incentives to turn city into green maritime hub. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's finance minister, Paul Chan-mopa, is expected to unveil a range of measures to promote green energy and environmental sustainability in his budget speech on Wednesday. One key initiative will be the establishment of a regional green fuel bunkering center, offering financial incentives and infrastructure support to the maritime industry and vessel owners to encourage them to adopt greener practices. The government will also subsidize ship owners to retrofit their vessels for greater energy efficiency. The International Maritime Organization, IMO, has said that shipping accounts for 3% of global CO2 emissions, and the industry burns 5 million barrels of fossil fuel per day. The IMO has set a target of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions from shipping by 2050. Hong Kong is also considering the possibility of supplying ocean-going vessels with greener fuel, such as methanol, which analysts have predicted could double in demand by 2050. By defining sex, some states are denying transgender people of legal recognition. The Toronto Star. The past year has seen the introduction of a number of bills in U.S. states that aim to legally define sex as binary, effectively erasing transgender and non-binary people from the public sphere. The measures, introduced by conservative lawmakers, argue that states have a right to limit the participation of transgender people in public life, by restricting them from using appropriate bathrooms and participating in sports. The bills are also unclear on how they would deal with intersex people, who are born with physical traits that do not fit traditional binary definitions. The medical community has criticized the laws as unnecessary, as they are based on an outdated idea of sex and gender. A total of 13 states have seen such bills proposed this year, with advocates for LGBTQ+ rights expecting that number to rise. A number of states have already passed laws banning gender-affirming care for transgender minors. Tireless campaigner for cultural diversity in the arts. The Sydney Morning Herald. Sneeja Gunyu, a professor of literature and a tireless advocate for cultural diversity in the arts, passed away on January 8, 2024. Gunya was known for her pioneering work in promoting and analyzing works by Australian authors of non-Anglo-Celtic background, which contributed to a more accurate portrayal of Australia's literary landscape. She also played a significant role in arts policy, advocating for the inclusion of artists from non-English-speaking backgrounds. Gunya published numerous books and articles and was respected by her colleagues and students. She leaves behind a lasting legacy in the field of multicultural literature. No pictures. Afghanistan journalists fear clampdown on visual reporting. Nikkei Asia. Taliban officials in Afghanistan are increasingly ordering journalists not to take photographs, raising concerns that visual reporting could be completely banned. The Taliban views journalists as infidels and has imposed restrictions on journalism since taking over in August 2021. Thousands of journalists have fled the country, and over 300 media outlets have shut down. Journalists heavily rely on visuals to substantiate their reports, and a ban on visuals would essentially amount to a ban on media. Female journalists are also worried that the Taliban might extend its ban to their voices as well. Ontario teenager who broke indoor world 400-meter record nearly didn't run race. CBC. Canadian sprinter Christopher Morales-Williams almost didn't run the race in which he broke the world indoor record in the men's 400-meter. Feeling sick and unable to eat breakfast, Morales-Williams threw up before the event. However, he decided to participate and ended up clocking a time of 44.49 seconds at the NCAA's Southeastern Conference Championships, beating the previous record set by American Karen Clement in 2005. Morales-Williams said he hopes his achievement will inspire young Canadian athletes. His record is now subject to World Athletics ratification process. That's all for today's news briefing. I'm Dr. Six, your favorite observer from the 6-degree world. Let's recap the highlights. First, German banks are facing the threat of a slow-motion commercial real estate crash, which could be more concerning than the situation in the US. The low level of non-performing loans is masking the vulnerability of German property values to higher borrowing costs. Next, China's crackdown on the financial sector is causing finance professionals to rethink their careers. President Xi Jinping's call for common prosperity has hit salaries hard and triggered belt-tightening, leading to a brain drain in the industry. China's financial sector may soon be dominated by government-run banks and insurance companies, stifling innovation. In Australia, rugby league legend Wally Lewis is advocating for funding for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, education, support, and awareness. Lewis, who is battling short-term memory loss, is pushing for more resources to protect Australian children who play contact sports. Companies around the world are racing to produce green ammonia, a more environmentally friendly alternative to conventional ammonia production. These innovations aim to reduce the climate impact of ammonia production, which currently accounts for nearly 2% of global CO2 emissions. In the US, there is a growing call for banning smartphones in classrooms. Many states are considering legislation to restrict cell phone use in schools, citing studies that show increased learning and less distraction when devices are removed. Finally, in sports news, UCLA secured a three-way tie for second place in the Pac-12 after defeating Colorado in college basketball. And Canadian sprinter Christopher Morales-Williams broke the world indoor record in the men's 400-meter, despite feeling sick before the race. That's all for today's news. Now it's time for your thoughts. What do you make of the German property market's vulnerability, China's crackdown on the financial sector, or the push to ban smartphones in classrooms? Share your ideas and questions, and let's have a lively discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.